Welcome to The Whole Pineapple. I'm Ruby Boris.
And I'm Ann Judge. The Whole Pineapple is a podcast about wellness focused around fertility. And on these weekly mini episodes, we bring you bite-sized ideas for you to snack on.
Like breathing exercises, book reviews. Maybe we'll review some scientific research, or we'll share some wellness and fertility stories from our listeners.
So if you're looking for a tip or a trick related to your fertility and well-being, then you've come to the right place.
Let's dig in.
We are super happy to be able to welcome back Dr. Tollefson. I hope you got a chance to listen to her full-size episode. It had so much great content. But for this short snack, we want to go a little bit more into her personal history and talk about being a breast cancer survivor, talk about how that area is also so important when it comes to lifestyle and what we can all do to optimize our chances of hopefully not having to be a survivor. But if we are in that situation, how do we really live our best life afterwards?
Thank you so much for joining us, Michelle, Dr. Tollefson. It's wonderful to have you back.
Of course. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So I guess, we'd start with, why don't you just kind of tell us a little about your story, what happened, what can we learn from your journey?
Sure. Thank you. So as a gynecologist, I did many, many breast exams and still do breast exams on women for their annual exams or if they came in with different problems. And of course, I was trained about breast cancer and trained about breast health and never really gave a lot of thought to my own risk of breast cancer. I didn't have any significant family history of breast cancer. I breastfed all three of my kids for over a year. I did regular self-exams. I went in for my checkups. I did my mammograms. I didn't drink alcohol in excess, just a little wine here and there. I exercised. I was a healthy weight. I ate pretty healthfully. And so it really wasn't on my radar. I had a normal mammogram at 40. And then a year later, the reminder came on my phone to get my annual mammogram. And it had been a year and a week since my last one. And so I looked at that reminder and I thought, should I schedule it or should I not? There are a lot of different conflicting guidelines or some different suggestions regarding some of the different organizations as far as how frequently a woman should get mammograms and when they should start. And so I decided that I would like to get them annually, though I know there are others who choose to get them every couple years or that they delay starting them past the age of 40. But I'm a fan of doing them starting at the age of 40 and annually personally, though it doesn't work for everyone. But I got mine a year and a week later and I had a 2-centimeter mass invading my chest wall and I didn't have any symptoms. It was behind my nipple and it was invading my chest wall. So I couldn't feel it even before they did the biopsy. I tried to feel it. I was like, did I miss something? Like what could I have done differently?
Yeah.
And so, so I had that breast cancer, the call that nobody wants to get, that call that changes your life where everything kind of goes out of focus and then things kind of come into perspective about what is really important. So I went through 16 rounds of chemotherapy and I also had 7 surgeries. I had a bilateral mastectomy. Some reconstruction. I had my ovaries removed because it wasn't a BRCA positive, but because of the type, it wasn't how aggressive it was. I had my ovaries removed, which between chemotherapy and that put me immediately into menopause. And early on when I was diagnosed, I knew as I was sitting there in the room, actually waiting for the biopsy, I'd seen it on the films, on the mammogram. And so I knew that we were pretty sure we were dealing with cancer, that we needed the biopsy to confirm. But as I was sitting there waiting, people kept coming by because I was at the hospital where I had worked and people kept saying, I'm so sorry, which of course would be the normal thing to say. And I would have said to somebody else, but I kept feeling like my power go away. Like I kept feeling like smaller and smaller, like, oh my goodness, is my life over? Like, what? And so I knew that I needed that I was going to need to fight this with lifestyle medicine and conventional medicine. And so I decided that I would meet with the dietitians and to learn everything I could about nutrition and cancer treatment and survivorship, that I would meet with a physical therapist and find out more about exercise and physical activity during treatment. There's some great research on physical activity and how it can help with chemo-related fatigue for some cancers, for some people. You really need to talk, if you're in this situation or have loved ones in this situation, you need to talk with your oncologist because every type of cancer and situation is different. But I met with the dietitians. I met with a counselor who helped me as far as managing the emotional part of it. I was having problems sleeping, especially initially. The stress of it, telling my kids, was the hardest part.
I was going to say, how old were your children when all this was happening?
Yeah, so they were 3 and 6.
Oh, wow.
They're 3 and 6.
Okay.
Yeah. And my 17, so she was 14. So yeah, so they were younger. So that was the hardest part. But the lifestyle medicine, it gave me something to focus on. Like during my treatment, I did chemotherapy, but it gave me something to really focus on. And I felt like I was able to take some of that power back, some of the power that was taken from me because of the cancer diagnosis. I felt like I was able to take some of that back. What was so exciting to me is that when I started learning more about nutrition and cancer, was that a cancer treatment, cancer survivorship, was that it once again wasn't that different from what I had already been doing, which and once again, there's some different things if somebody is struggling with certain, there's ins and outs of chemotherapy. So once again, see your oncologist, get their recommendations, have them connect you with an oncology dietitian that they usually work in conjunction with, and they'll give you the recommendations specific for yours. But we know that diet and nutrition probably contributes to about 20 to 60% of cancers worldwide. And so it does play a role. It plays a role in risk, though it's not the whole story. Once again, don't blame yourself. Believe me, if I could, I've gone back in my mind so many times, like I tell patients not to do until there's, but going back, could I have done something different? Is there anything I could have done to prevent this? What could I have done? And I
think that has so many parallels with infertility too. So many people are like, but I do everything right. I've done everything right. How can I not be getting pregnant? And so, yeah, it's like none of this is happening because you're at fault.
Nope. It's there's so much that we know and there's so much that we don't know. And it doesn't help to play those tapes in our head. So that's why focusing on lifestyle medicine was really beneficial for me. But some of the different recommendations, I recommend that people, if they're wanting more information on healthy lifestyle behaviors and cancer, that they visit the American Institute of Cancer Research, AICR. They have great resources, and they have like the top 10 recommendations for cancer prevention that I love to share with patients. Most of them are nutrition related, though not all. There's one related that I think that your listeners will really like as far as breastfeeding. One of the 10 recommendations is for mothers to breastfeed and for children to be breastfed. That actually decreases the risk, we think, of some cancers as well if children can be breastfed. And then another one is body fatness, to try to be as lean as possible within that normal range of body weight. And that can support fertility as well. I'm not somebody who likes to focus on the calories or to focus on the weight. I think it's a kind of a whole picture. I'm very body positive, but we do know that there's some research out there that shows that if we can be within an optimal or health promoting weight, that can decreases the risk of cancer. Also, it's good for survivorship. Physical activity, to be as physically active as part of everyday life. So trying to get some aerobic activity in every day, to try to do some strength training or resistance training at least a couple times a week. And then to avoid sedentary activity. So I'm on an exercise ball right now, so I can bounce a little bit. I try to get up and stretch, but to get some physical activity in. The rest are about food. So one of theirs is foods and drinks that promote weight gain, to limit those. So limiting consumption of energy dense foods and avoiding sugary drinks. So avoiding soda, avoiding candy, avoiding, a lot of those really energy dense foods that don't have a lot of nutrients. Number 4 is plant food. So eat mostly foods of plant origin. They're not saying you have to be vegan or vegetarian, but they're saying to eat most of your foods come from plants, fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, beans, seeds, legumes, all of those things that promote overall fertility and decrease the risk of cancer. And then animal foods. Number 5 is animal foods. Limit intake of red meat and avoid processed meat. And there's research around that processed meat and being a carcinogen as well. So that's where limiting intake of red meat and avoiding processed meat. Number 6 is alcoholic drinks. Limit alcoholic drinks. As a breast cancer survivor, I avoid them completely. But as far as their recommendations and looking at the research, they're saying for prevention to try to limit alcoholic drinks. Number 7 is preservation, processing, and preparation. Limit consumption of salt. And avoid moldy cereals or grains or pulses. And so once again, they're looking at the research and the global community. And so being mindful of that. And then dietary supplements. Try to meet your nutritional needs through diet alone and not rely on nutritional supplements. For your reproductive age women, I, of course, recommend a prenatal vitamin with folic acid. But for cancer prevention, it's really been shown that food is what is superior. If there was a magic pill that I could recommend that had research behind it for you, I would recommend it. But there's not. And then number 10, the last one is follow the recommendations for cancer prevention for cancer survivors. So I follow those recommendations as well. I do think it's beneficial to know there's some research around breast cancer and vitamin D. So you might want to talk with your healthcare provider about having your vitamin D level checked, but really just trying to eat a lot of those health promoting foods, get in that physical activity and then with all of those things, don't avoid your mammograms. Even if you're like me and you think, oh, my risk is low, that mammogram a year and a week from my previous this one saved my life. And I am a cancer survivor now. I'm doing well. If somebody would have told me a few years ago when I was diagnosed in mid-July of 2019 that I would feel as good as I do now, I wouldn't have believed them. But yeah, survivorship is, and I think most people don't want to be a cancer survivor. They want to be a thriver. 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer during their lifetime in the United States. So it's common, but I don't want women to fear it. What I want them to do is I want everyone to not fear disease, but try to embrace these healthy lifestyle behaviors, which will help you feel better in the meantime, help you feel better, help you live your best life, and help to decrease the risk of these conditions. And if you do get them, like me, they'll hopefully help you to go through the treatment and emerge on the other side as a survivor and thriver through lifestyle medicine and conventional medicine too. So get your mammogram. If you're over the age of 40 and you're due for a mammogram, get your mammogram. Don't delay. If you ever feel any lumps or bumps or anything abnormal, call. Don't wait for your mammogram, then call and get in to see your care provider so that they can help you address it. But even if you're symptom free, even if you don't have a family history, regardless of your lifestyle behaviors, unfortunately, we can't eliminate the risk altogether. So cancer screening is really important.
That's wonderful. And what really struck me too is that you were mentioning a lot of the things that your diagnosis affect. So those 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, it really affected your sleep and your social support and all of those things. But then that is what you turned around and used to turn back and fight that cancer too. So really amazing.
And thinking of the timing of all this, does that mean that you were going through all this during the pandemic? Was a lot of your support that you found then virtual, or how did you kind of get all these resources at a time that so many things in our systems were shutting down?
Yeah, great question. So I finished chemotherapy on Valentine's Day right before the pandemic really took off here in the United States. And so that was why Dr. Amy Commander was leading an in-person group for breast cancer survivors, paving the path to wellness. And it switched to being online. And that's when Dr. Beth Brady said, I think you should connect with Dr. Amy Commander and possibly join her group. And I did not think I needed a group to meet with other women who are experiencing this. I thought, you know what? I'm finished with chemotherapy. I know it. I know all the information. I don't really need this. And then I found that it was extremely helpful. I mean, you can know everything, you can know the information, but actually putting it into practice and then working on attitude, working on energy, working on connecting everything with your purpose. Those are really powerful too. And I believe in ACLMs there, the 6 pillars of nutrition, physical activity, stress, sleep, social connection, and avoiding risky substances. But I love that Paving the Path to Wellness has attitude, variety, investigation, goal setting, purpose, those as well, because that's really powerful. And I think that that's what, especially when you get a diagnosis like this, or for your listeners who may be struggling with infertility, you need all of the support that you can get in order to be as healthy throughout that process. Infertility was one of the other, most challenging times in my life, struggling with that as an OB-GYN. I felt like everybody else was getting pregnant easily, including people who didn't maybe even want to get pregnant. I felt like everybody around me was pregnant except me. I felt like I was the only one struggling. Of course I wasn't, but it sometimes feels like that. And so whatever you can do to nurture your overall health and well-being, no shame, blame, or guilt, realizing it is not your fault. There are some things you can do to support your fertility, but stay connected with Anne and Ruby and the team and nurture yourself, nurture yourself. It's about nourishing yourself through food, through movement that feels good to you, the joy of movement and exercise should not be a punishment, stress resilience to try to help yourself with mindfulness, with meditation or breathing or what works for you, asking for help, setting boundaries, sleep, prioritizing sleep. Oh my goodness, I teach a whole class on stress and sleep. So prioritizing sleep, which I do now as an OB-GYN. There were many sleepless nights that I spent delivering babies. I don't deliver babies anymore. I work at I volunteer at a nonprofit clinic and do mostly gynecology and then do lifestyle medicine, of course, across the reproductive lifespan. But sleep is definitely undervalued in today's society, and that is a superpower as well. If you are struggling with sleep or getting less than 7 hours of sleep a night, if you can put things into place, some different sleep, what we call sleep hygiene, in order to help you with sleep, that will make you feel so much better for most people.
Thank you so much. As always, I always learn so much whenever I hear you speak, or now I've been fortunate enough to actually chat with you. So it's just been amazing. Thank you so much.
Ruby was so thrilled when you said you would come talk with us. She was like, again, she's not joking about this being like she got to meet a celebrity. So.
I seriously was running around the clinic. I'm like, guess what?
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of the Whole Pineapple Podcast. We hope it was helpful.
If you know someone who could benefit from hearing the podcast, we hope you'll share it with them.
And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review The Whole Pineapple on your favorite podcast app. Every rating and review makes us easier to find.
This podcast is sponsored by Seattle Reproductive Medicine and is produced by Audiotocracy Podcast Production. We'll see you next time. Have a delicious week.